Right, welcome to the next episode, continuing with the use of turtles in survival mode. If you remember on the last one, what we did was to take a tree down, and we ended up with a sapling in the turtle here, which I've now manually placed on the ground, and I've just gone back to creative mode just to produce a tree. Wow, didn't mean to completely cover what we're doing here, but anyway, so we've now got, if I open the turtle, I've removed everything from here and I've planted the sapling that appeared, and I've deliberately filled up the screen here with a lot of rubbish. So there's some improvements I wanted to make to the code, and I've also switched to full HD screen resolution so that we can more easily get the Minecraft and the Notepad++ on. I've increased the font size on here, so hopefully it will still be fairly clear, and I've added a couple of comments to remind me what I'm intending to do this video. Firstly, I wanted to just drag in the API for turtles and give you that. I did put this in the description on the last video, and if I remember, I'll put it in on this one. So this gives you a list of all the things that the turtles can do. We've got a crafty turtle, so obviously we can use turtle.craft, whereas any other can't. We've got a mining turtle, which is the crafty mining turtle, if you remember, so we can do anything in yellow, and of course anything in white. So there's a bunch of stuff here that we will find useful. I'll just move that out of the way again for the moment. Now, if you recall, we made this turtle by embedding a computer inside an iron shell. So we've been using so far turtle dot, as we have up here, turtle dot select, turtle dot this, that and the other. We've also got access to the computer which is buried inside the turtle, and that comes under the, instead of having turtle, it comes under term. So if I go back to Lua and we want to clear this screen, we can use a Lua command using the terminal, which is of course the shortened down to term, to clear the screen. Now if I just hit term.clear, what will happen is it will clear it, but the cursor will stay exactly where it is, just here. So before I do that, I'm going to put term.set cursor pos, if I can get that to come up. Yep, almost. Cursor pos, there we go. And then we're going to set that to 1, 1. 1, 1 is the top left hand corner just up here. So if I set the cursor position there, we're now up here. So this is still here. We now want to clear it. Term.clear. Oops, I misspelt that, as you can see. So what I'll do is I'll redo the term set cursor position. You can see it's a complete and utter muddle here. And then we'll do term dot clear, and hopefully I spelled it right this time, and oh, at last we're getting somewhere. So we can programmatically clear this terminal screen, which would be kind of handy because we can perhaps print some comments. So that's one thing I wanted to show you in there, and we'll go back now to here. Right, so the other thing I wanted to show you is that in Notepad++ itself, once it starts to get quite lengthy and wordy, you can, by clicking the little minus sign here, shrink it up a little bit so that you can work on a particular function without getting the rest of it in the way. So if I just click on function main, and I've got here a comment to myself to show you how to clear the screen. I've done it directly in Lua here, so let's do it inside our program. So we're going to do term.clear, and then we'll follow that by term.set set cursor pos 1, 1. So that will set the cursor position back up to this top bit here and clear the screen. And now we can print perhaps a warning. So let's do that. We'll say print, and we'll say press ESC key starting in 2 secs. So that will warn the user that they should press the escape key because we're about to start, and it gives them a chance to do it. But of course that means we've now got to delay the running of the rest of this program by a couple of seconds. For that we're using one other object that we have access to, which is the terminal's operating system. In other words, we are now going to access the operating system inside the terminal, which is OS. So os.sleep, and then we'll put 2 in there. In Lua, particularly in Minecraft, the figure you put in here is seconds. In most programming languages that would be in milliseconds, so you would have had to have put 2000, but OS sleep 2 is seconds in Lua. That will then sleep for a couple of seconds before it carries on. Now, one thing I didn't do last time was, it's just possible that this slot 1 is not selected. It might have been selected somewhere else, so we really need to reset that whenever we run a new program. So we'll put turtle.select 1. Now make sure that before it starts to dig, it selects slot 1, so when it does dig, the wood will appear in slot 1. Now you'll notice from the 2 or 3 statements that we've just added that there's now a difference between what we were using before. All these other ones here, we've got the brackets. These are functions that we're calling from here, but we're not supplying any further information, whereas now we are saying, first of all, on the terminal, set the cursor position to 1, 1. So it is passing what are called arguments. These are what you want to set the cursor position to. You're asking it to set it to those 2. We're asking it to sleep for 2 seconds. That could be any number you want to put in there. This time we're asking it to select a particular slot. So we're now passing in arguments, which is something we didn't have to be concerned about earlier with, for instance, all these other functions. What doesn't work, in case your mind has immediately gone to it, is if we put in turtle.forward 5 or 4, that will move forward 4. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. We will overcome that later by writing our own function that will override the basic one. But for the moment, some things will take arguments and others won't. And that list that I showed you here does show you the ones that do and don't. For example, we've got turtle select, and then you put the number, slot number, and then you've got another one which is quite useful, get item count, and that tells you what's in a particular slot. So some of them will take arguments, others don't. This API is very, very useful. Let's bring that back out again. So before we go further, let me just exit out from there we go, and just to make sure we don't have any confusion, we'll clear that completely. Clear works in the terminal here, but it doesn't work within Lua, so that's a difference you have to accept there. So the first change we made then was to clear the screen and to select slot 1. So I've done those. I've left the comments in place because it tells you what they do, so that's quite helpful. Now the next thing I wanted to do was to say if a sapling is present, plant it. So how can we do that? Well, if you think about it, what happened was it initially dug some wood, and then when the saplings were harvested, they went in here. It's just possible we might have got an apple in there, and then maybe a sapling there, or maybe sapling there, apple there. We're not too sure, but it's possible that you could have picked up a sapling, and I think you might immediately notice a way that we could check that, because we know that the logs are going to go in slot 1. So if there's something in slot 2, it might be a sapling. So perhaps we should just check for that as a way of discovering. So if we go back over to here, we can say if a sapling present, plant it. We could perhaps just check is if turtle dot get item count, which is one of those I just showed you, slot 2 is greater than 0, then end. So how does that help? So what we're doing here is we're saying if the number of items, get item count, in slot 2 is greater than 0, then we know that we've got something in there. It might be a sapling, it might be an apple. So let's assume that it's a sapling. Then we can ask the turtle to plant it. So how do we want to plant it? Let's just come back to the reality here. So imagine that your turtle has dug the tree, it's now sitting on the ground, and inside it's got a sapling. So how would we plant it? Well, of course we could just simply place it where the tree currently is and put it back down. But if you remember, during the process of this cutting the tree down, the turtle moved forward, then cut the tree down, and then dropped back here. So it's moved forward by one place. Let's just clear this out of the way. So if it did that and it was already here, our new sapling will be one space further ahead. Now that's significant if you're perhaps trying to design a tree farm and you want to plant the sapling exactly where the original tree was. The other thing we could do perhaps is, if we have landed now and the tree was immediately above us, is to simply raise up one block and drop the sapling beneath us. So that might be worth doing. Let's right click on there for a minute to get that out of the way. So now we're going to check is if the turtle get item count in slot 2 is greater than 0, it might be a sapling. Let's try and plant it. So we'll go turtle dot up, and then we can do then to select turtle dot select, we're going to select dot slot 2 and then try and place it down. Turtle dot place down. Now if that was a sapling, that would work. If it's an apple, it's not going to be able to be placed down. You could drop it down and then it'll just dump it on the ground, but we want place down means specifically to place the block or the object and actually stick it there just as you would as a player. So again, if you remember, this will return a true or a false value. So we could then put if turtle dot place down, then we now know that we have placed a sapling, because an apple won't place. So that's a very simple test. We've first of all checked whether there's something in slot 2. We've then tried to place it. If we have placed it, we know that we've placed a sapling. Let's print out a message, print sapling placed. There we go. Whereas, oops, helps if you spell that correctly, sapling placed. Whereas if it didn't place it down, then you might want to say else print. Well, we know that there must have been something in that slot, but it couldn't place it, and so knowing that it's either going to be an apple or a sapling, we know that we've actually got an apple in there. So we can now say if you are hungry, I have an apple. There we go. So we've now got a message, an alternative message to put down if you have an apple rather than a sapling. So that's quite nice. Now that's okay, that will work perfectly, but what I'm thinking is we're trying to do a functional program. So why don't we make this little thing here into a function, just to keep up with the, because this main script is getting longer and longer and longer, so we want to break this up a bit. So let's do function, let's call it plant sapling, and then end. And what we can do is to, if I just make it like a space between mine, is to take all of this and Control X, and we'll place it there. So we've now moved our plant sapling to here. So what we'll do is, once the turtle has gone up, harvested everything and come down again, we're then just going to call plant sapling, just like that. So that has kept our main function again relatively small, and it means that this function that we're now going to call will still work, but if there's any errors or we want to improve it, we don't have to be messing around in the main section. We've got our own private little function which will run here and do it. So let's give that a go. I'll save it and I'll return to this. The tree is grown, so yep, we can now get this running. So what should happen now when I type in fell tree is either I've messed up the program and it'll error, or it will warn us to get out of the way. So if it warns me to get out of the way, I'll press the escape key. So here goes. Yep, you saw that. It said press escape starting in 2 seconds. And it went up and down, and it's planted a sapling. Okay, so that's worked out nicely. You'll notice that this time it didn't rotate there. So let's check why that didn't. It looks like I've accidentally, when I was editing this, I've missed out the code here, which was get saplings, which is why it didn't rotate. But that's again the beauty of working with functions, is that I can now put that back in just like that. And so I can't run it at the moment because obviously I've destroyed the tree. The other thing that we might want to do is, it's planted the sapling, but it's kind of stuck over the top of it. So let's improve our program yet again, and we'll make sure that the turtle moves back. So plant sapling, we're just going to shrink this one up to get it out of the way, shrink this one up. So that's fine. It's planted the sapling, placed down. Now we want to move the turtle back out of the way. Turtle dot back and turtle dot down. Now this process that you've just watched here is kind of a bit of a debugging session. The bug was, first of all, it didn't rotate when it was supposed to, and that was because I'd accidentally removed the get saplings here, and also when it landed and planted the sapling, that was perfect, but it didn't then reset itself back to where it was. So we've now improved that program still further. So if I save that one, escape from here, I'm in creative mode at the moment deliberately, so I'm going to reset this by just simply, if I've got a sapling in there, let's go and grab one, yep, and we'll plant one here. Now the turtle is not on the ground, but I don't think that will matter. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use bone meal to get this into a tree again, hopefully. Typical. Oh, there we go. Right, so we're going to run this again, and hopefully I'll just make sure I saved it. So I'm going to right click on there. Oh, you'll see I've accidentally dyed my turtle. Why? Because I had some bone meal in there. Oh, that's kind of a little thing perhaps you weren't aware of. You can dye your turtle different colours there. So and it says sapling placed. Press escape, so starting in 2 seconds. Sapling placed. So we're just going to make sure I've saved it. Yes, I have, and we'll run it again. Let me take everything out so that we don't have any spoil it, and it's already on slot 2, so we should see that when we run this it should switch that back to slot 1. So let's move the thing out. As I press the enter key, the warning message will come up. Then once it starts, slot 1 is selected, which it has, and then up it goes. I'll just destroy this one because we started in the wrong place. Now, I've already seen room for further improvement is that we could start looking at these side branches and see if we could perhaps harvest those as well, especially on a tall tree like this one, which is quite difficult to do in survival mode when you're manually standing on there. There we go. So it's planted its sapling and it's moved back. So that has worked perfectly. Let's just see if it's got a message. Sapling placed. There we go. So next video what I'll be doing is to show you some simple but very useful routines that you can put in every turtle you make, so that if you wanted to move it, for example when it was 1 square above, it's a real aggravation to have to type lure then turtle dot down or forward or whatever. It would be much easier if you could just, if I escape from here, exit, there you go. As you see what I mean, it's a lot of grief, so it would be a lot easier to be able to simply type in, if I clear this, right, for example, if I wanted to go forward 5 places, I would go F5 and hit enter. This will crash out, of course, no such program, but that's what we were doing next time, so you can make short distance movements with the turtle and dig your way through things. So that's what we'll do next time, so see you shortly.